The first cry was lost to the breeze. By the time the sun climbed to its peak, Mara Hensley's lips were too parched to bleed. Her wrists bound tight against a wooden stake. Her ankles burned, raw, under the rough twine cutting into her flesh. The ground beneath her? It scorched right through her tattered skirt. Buzzards circled first, then came the chuckles. A handful of villagers lingered nearby, pretending to tend to chores, pretending they didn't see the young woman bound like some cautionary tale. Some crossed the path to dodge her gaze. A few smirked. No one stepped forward to help. An old woman at the crowd's edge whispered, "This ain't just." But her eyes flicked to Corbin's rifle, and she shrank back. Corbin Holt's shadow stretched across Mara's face. His voice sliced through the arid air, cold, cutting. "She thinks she can take from me and just walk off?" The crowd stayed quiet. A child snickered. Corbin's gloved hand tilted her chin with the tip of his rifle. "They say," he drawled, "next time you eye one of my cattle, girl, remember this heat? Remember the taste of grit?" Mara spat dust at his boots. "I didn't take a damn thing." Her voice broke, but it didn't waver. The crowd gasped. Corbin's grin faltered, just for a moment. Then he struck her across the face. The sound? It rang louder than her breath. He turned to the onlookers. "Let her roast a bit more. Maybe by dusk she'll speak true." The villagers scattered. The child bolted. Only the breeze lingered. Hours dragged on. The light shifted from amber to harsh white. Every second seared like a hot iron against her spine. Her mind, it wavered between fury and defeat. Somewhere behind her eyes, the world melted into heat and stillness. Then, the sound of hooves, slow, heavy, deliberate. A lone horse trudged along the bluff above the creek bed. The rider was an older man, wide-brimmed hat, face weathered like old leather. His name was Amos Kane. Once, he'd been the law in these parts. Now, just a shadow, seeking peace with his past. When he saw the figure tied under the blazing sky, something in his chest tightened. He slid off his horse, boots crunching on the cracked earth. For a moment, he just stood, staring. The girl's head hung low, her hair matted with sweat. He knew that face, not by name, but by memory. A decade ago, he'd let her father walk free, a desperate man caught taking grain to feed his kin. The law said hang him. Amos said no. He thought mercy would save them, but mercy, it broke them. He took a slow step closer. Mara raised her head, her voice a rasp, worn thin by thirst. Amos paused, glancing around as if expecting Corbin to appear. "Stop staring," she croaked. "Cut me loose or I'll do it myself." Amos froze. No fear in her voice, just fire. Her eyes burned, even as her body trembled. Those words, they hit him harder than any gunshot. He pulled a blade from his belt. The steel caught the sunlight as he sliced the twine around her wrists. He stopped to pour a thin stream of water into her cracked lips, steadying her as she coughed. The rope snapped, thread by thread. Her arms fell slack. She didn't thank him. She didn't look away either. "You know who I am?" he asked softly. She nodded once. "The man who let my father die broke." He swallowed the words, clawing up his throat. Behind them, thunder rumbled far off, though the sky was clear. A storm was brewing, but not from the heavens. Amos draped his worn jacket over her shoulders, a small gesture, but it carried the weight of all he hadn't done years ago. She flinched, then let it rest. As he untied her ankles, she whispered, "You'll get yourself killed for this." Amos grunted. Maybe, but I ain't leaving you to burn out here. Maybe, he added, eyes on the horizon. I've been dead a long time already. She looked at him then, really looked, as if weighing whether he was a fool or a redeemer. The breeze stirred the dust around them, swirling like a silent witness to something neither could yet name. If the man who once upheld justice had failed it, and the girl who once trusted in mercy had lost it, what was left between them now? The creek was still that evening. Amos carried Mara across the shallow water, one arm under her knees, the other holding her steady. She was light, too light for someone still breathing. The heat had drained her strength. The ropes took the rest. When he set her down near the cabin, she tried to stand. Her legs buckled. He caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy now," he said, voice gruff but soft at the edges. "You'll rest here tonight." She eyed the small homestead, a sagging porch, a few rusted tools by the door. It wasn't much, but it felt safer than the wide, harsh world beyond. "Why'd you help me?" Amos handed her a tin cup of water. "Guess I got tired of passing by wrong things." She gave a dry laugh. "Took you long enough." He smiled, a faint one, not reaching his eyes, but warming the air just a little. Mara sipped slowly, her gaze never leaving his. She saw something heavy in him, not pity, something deeper. "You think I'm lying about that cattle?" Amos shook his head. "I think you're telling the truth, and even if you weren't, no one deserves that." The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It felt like two souls circling the same wound from opposite sides. When night fell, Amos built a fire outside. The scent of smoke and pine filled the air. He gave her an old shirt to wear while hers dried by the flames. It hung loose on her frame, sleeves too long, but she didn't mind. She sat by the fire, staring into the glow. "You don't even know me," she said softly. "I don't need to. I know what it's like to want another shot." Those words sank deep. For the first time since that morning, Mara let herself breathe slow. The fear didn't fade, but it eased just enough for hope to creep in. The night buzzed with crickets. The stars above the creek glimmered, like a promise too fragile to voice. Mara glanced toward the dark hills. "You think he'll come for me?" Amos stared into the fire, jaw tight. "He will." She didn't ask more. She didn't need to, because sometimes the real threat isn't the man you escaped. It's the one already riding toward you. The next morning came heavy, with dust and quiet. Mara woke to the sound of a hammer. Amos was outside, mending a broken gate, sweat trickling down his neck. He looked older in the daylight, but not weaker. The kind of man who carried his guilt like others carried weapons. She stepped onto the porch, still in his shirt. "You always this quiet?" He glanced up, a faint smile under his hat's brim. "Only when I'm thinking, how foolish I've been." Before she could reply, a horse's cry pierced the morning. Two riders approached fast, their shadows stretching across the red earth. Amos's hand went to his pistol. The men slowed their horses near the gate, one shouting, "Sheriff Kane, that woman with you belongs to Corbin Holt. Hand her over." Amos didn't flinch. "Belongs? Nobody belongs to Corbin, or any man." The taller rider sneered. "He says she's a thief. We're just doing what he says." Amos stepped forward, boots sinking into the dirt. His voice dropped, calm, like a storm's first rumble. "I recall the last time I followed orders. Got folks killed. You want to be that kind of fool?" The rider shifted, uneasy. Mara stood behind him, her heart pounding, so hard it hurt. She saw the tremor in Amos's left hand, the clench of his jaw. He wasn't young anymore, but something in him hadn't aged. The fire. The taller man spat to the side. "We'll be back with more." Amos nodded slowly. "Bring more coffins while you're at it." The riders rode off fast, their hooves faded.
but the storm they brought didn't. Amos turned to the old woman who'd lingered earlier, slipping her a coin. "Get word to the marshal. Tell him Corbin's gone too far." Mara looked at him, her voice soft. "You just made things worse." He sighed. "Maybe, but maybe it's time someone stirred trouble for the right reason." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. For the first time since meeting him, she saw something beyond regret in his eyes. Resolve. As the breeze kicked up, dust swirling around the porch, Amos reloaded his pistol and muttered, more to himself than her, "Justice don't come from the badge, it comes from the man behind it." He looked toward the hills where Corbin's ranch loomed like a dark memory that wouldn't fade. And deep down they both knew, by dusk, blood would stain the creek again. If you've been riding with me this far, grab a cup of coffee and tell me what time it is where you're at. And if you want more stories from the raw, beating heart of the frontier, hit that subscribe button. I'll be here, waiting by the fire. The sun sank behind the hills, bathing the homestead in a wash of crimson. Amos stood by the porch, loading shells into his old revolver, each click like a heartbeat waking up to fight. Mara sat near the doorway, watching the fire's smoke twist into the evening air. She felt it, the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. "Corbin ain't the type to back off," she said softly. Amos nodded. "No, he'll come. Men like him always do." She took a breath. "So, what's the plan?" He looked at her, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "Plan's simple. We make sure he regrets ever being born."
The first sound of hooves hit before the stars appeared. 4 riders, maybe 5. Their torches flickered across the field like angry fireflies. Mara's hand shook as she gripped the shotgun he'd given her. "I don't even know how to use this." "You'll learn quick," Amos said, calm as stone. "Fear's a good teacher." The men dismounted, shouting threats that echoed off the canyon walls. One torch hit the shed roof. Flames licked the wood. Bright, wild. Amos stepped into the open, pistol drawn. "Corbin, you want her? Come take her." Corbin's voice cut through the smoke. "She's mine to judge, Kane. You got no law here." Amos fired a warning shot into the dirt. "There's law enough, for both of us." Gunfire split the night wide open. The fight was quick, brutal. Amos moved like a man who'd danced this dance too many times. He hit one, maybe 2, but not before a bullet grazed his arm, knocking him to the ground. Mara screamed his name. She ran forward, grabbed the shotgun, and fired. She dropped the heavy gun, snatching a nearby stone and hurling it at Corbin to throw him off, her arm trembling from exhaustion. The shot went wild, clipping Corbin's thigh instead of his chest. She stumbled back, shocked by the recoil. The blast threw Corbin backward, his hat tumbling into the flames. He hit the ground hard, staring up at her, eyes wide, with something between fear and disbelief. Amos dragged himself to his feet, limping toward her. A few villagers emerged from the shadows, drawn by the gunfire, their murmurs growing as they saw Corbin on the ground. The old woman from earlier appeared, nodding to Amos. "I sent word to the marshal. He's coming." "You did good," she said quietly. Mara looked at the smoke curling from the barrel. Her hand shook, but her voice held steady. "He's not dead." Amos met her eyes. "Then he'll wish he was." The fire roared louder. The night swallowed the last gunshot, but from the darkness near the creek, a sound rose that neither expected, and what came next would change everything. The fire died down slow. By the time the smoke cleared and the sky turned pale and quiet, the air smelled of ash and rain. Corbin was gone, hauled off by the marshal, who finally did his job. Mara sat by the creek, knees pulled close, eyes on the water. Amos was beside her, his arm wrapped in a bandage she'd torn from her skirt's hem. They didn't speak for a long while. Words weren't needed. Sometimes, silence says what pain can't. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I didn't mean to shoot him that close." Amos nodded slowly. "And I didn't mean to let your father down, all those years ago."